Welcome to Not Nicole, episode 13. Today I am in my office space. Behind me is a roll top desk that my grandfather built. Was one of the things that I love about it is that each of those individual slats of the roll top he drilled holes through and then loaded a spring. So it's not fabric back, it is spring loaded. I think I need to actually put like what I have is like food safe beeswax that you can use on cutting boards, and I think I need to put that in the rail. It sticks a bit, and hydrate the wood a bit. I think would help it. But I love that desk. It is beautiful. Yes, I have stuff in all the drawers, and then across the top there are gnomes that I've knit, intermixed with some clowns. I don't consider them clowns. They are based off of, or they are the Emmett Kelly Jr. hobo clowns. So they look more like mimes, with the painted faces, and they're hobos, term from the 20s, a century ago. Like the people during the Depression who traveled on trains were a bit worn down, patched coats and things like that, and not like the silly happy faces. I will admit most of those I received while I was in high school, so most of them were gifts, and I definitely did enjoy them. I pared down the ones that I have, and I do not actively collect them anymore. But I figured clowns and gnomes, what could go better together? So they're displayed across the top there. Today is August 18th. That is a Tuesday. This will be going up tomorrow on Wednesday. Trying to give myself a bit more time. And I am drinking Berry Me and Chocolate black tea that I picked up at Tea Smith in Omaha, Nebraska. I also have my water. Today I'm wearing my staple tank. So I know I showed it, I had finished it in the last episode and did get it blocked. You can see. Push the chair out of the way. Go this way. Today is actually the first day I have worn it since I actually blocked it. The one key tip I did get from the dyer, this is knit up in Yarns by LaRue Cotton, is that for plant-based fibers, it is always, after you wash them, best to steam them. It'll really help to tighten up the stitches and set them in place. Yeah, I'm actually really happy with the way this fits. I am debating if I want to go down a needle size on the armhole ribbing and make that a little smaller. I don't think it is flaring, but it's also not as tight as it could be. So I may change it, I may not. Uh, if I make another one, and I would consider it, I would make the V-neck go deeper, I think. Just because the ribbing actually brings it up about an inch. And so if I took it an inch lower with the ribbing, then it would end up really just about an inch lower. So if I make a third one, that is what I will do. I will make the V-neck deeper. Though in the Discord for the fabric designer, Perfectly Knotted Claire Jackson, there is talk of a staple tank light, which is a fingering weight version of this tank top. And the size that I am for her usually fills up in like 2 minutes. So if she puts that up for test, which I would love to do, I will have to be really quick about it, and like it'll be scheduled. Like, no, if I get it, okay, but yeah, that. Anyway, so that is what I'm wearing today. Diving right in, I'm going to start off with my next finished object. I know I had like 2 or 3 episodes where I was always working on the same thing and nothing was getting finished, and now I've had 3 episodes in a row where things are getting finished. It's very exciting. So I can move on to new things, but this is my Attagirl. Like, Attagirl, good job. It was knit with 2 fingering weight yarns held together. And I do have some FO photos that I will put up so that you can see what it looks like on me. And if there's enough time, I have a after blocking before finished picture or video of me trying it on. And honestly, I blocked it just to check the length because it is essentially a lace stitch. And I decided once it was blocked that really all I needed to do was put the ribbing on. So the sweater was blocked, everything but the ribbing. And I'm not worried about blocking the ribbing before I wear it. So I had 3 skeins of each of these 2 yarns that I used, and I only used 2. Part of the reason why I only used 2 is because I did shorten some things. So this is what I have left of my second skein of each color. This one here is Rosy Futures by Expression Fiber Arts. And this one here is Fruitcake Ice Cream by Lolo Did It. And since I have them in this bag, here are the 2 skeins. I'm filming against the wall. I have light there and natural light there. So the light is a little different this episode, but it was too warm, or I was too warm, out in my normal space. But, so those 2 held together. And, all right, so I took some notes for this. I originally started this sweater May 2nd, and then I ripped it out and restarted May 31st because my gauge on the mesh was bigger than it needed to be. And I was probably at like a 48-inch bust when I was aiming for a 40 1.5 inch bust. Much too big. And so restarted May 31st, finished August 15th. And it was a total of 804 yards of this blossom fingering Rosy Future and 832 yards of this Lolo Did It L'Original Fruitcake Ice Cream. The modifications, the two that I did. The pattern recommended knitting the stockinette portion of the sleeve for 3 to 5 inches and then doing the ribbing. And as you can see where that starts, it's a pretty significant ribbing. And I just knew I didn't want my sleeve that long. Holding it up, you know, to my arm. If I'd added another inch even, it would have been almost to my elbow, or almost in my elbow, which, I don't know, I consider it more of a summer top. So I shortened both sleeves by an inch, only did 2 inches, and then for the body, I was supposed to knit that, or the pattern's written for a longer body. It recommended 15 inches before the ribbing, so the ribbing in all places is the same depth, which is about 1.5 inches. So I mean, that would have been 16.5. My mesh, I decided it was at the right length at 10.5 inches. And so with the ribbing, what is that, 12? It's a 12-inch body. I really like where that hits me. Now, getting into works in progress. The one I was showing last time, I know I talked about getting this one done in 2 weeks, but I kind of backed off and have had a few days where I've only done a few rows. And that is the second sock of what I am calling the Canyon socks. I did complete the gusset decreases. I had to undo a few of them because I was knitting it at the state fair, and we'll just say the numbers weren't matching, and then I thought they were after I tinked back like 4 rows, and then I was working on it again and the numbers weren't matching. It was off by a stitch. I'm like, in a sock, what difference is a stitch gonna make? But yeah, these will definitely be done by the next episode, and then there will be a new sock cast on. And so there is the completed sock. I do have a second work in progress that was not on any radar. This one is, I'll start with the yarn and maybe we'll understand. This is the yarn I'm using, and if it looks familiar, yes, it is the leftover yarn from my Waystone pullover. I think it was listed as 24 grams of this one left and 60 something grams of this one left. And I really wanted to try and use up the yarn. Looking through patterns, I know that this yarn would, I figure, a essentially almost 90 grams. Yeah, close to 90 grams of worsted weight yarn would be able to make me a hat. But I knew I'd have to use both colors, either with a contrasting brim or some color work. And as I was looking at patterns, I ended up deciding on this one. I did have cable patterns in my library that I thought could work, but the thing about cables is they take more yarn, more stitches, because the fabric is condensed and crossing over itself. Whereas, yes, stranded knitting does also take more, well, I mean, row for row takes less line or less yarn, since you're not so I'm dropping stitches, because taking yarn in a straight stitch or straight line is much less than wrapping it in loops. So this pattern I've actually knit before, and I still have it in my queue because I want to knit a sport weight version. But this is the worsted weight version of the Flicker and Flame hat by Andrea Mowry. And, you know, I had it in my stash. I had the yarn. I thought it would look really good together. So, I don't know. I wanted something that I could get done really quick. And this is day 3. Dropping a stitch again. I maybe need a slightly larger needle. I'm on a 16. Yeah, so I had the pattern in my library. I know I've made it before and I've given them away, so I don't actually have one in my own finished objects, and I thought it would be a good way to use up that yarn without needing to buy any more, which is just as exciting. Put it back in one of my gnome bags. Those are works in progress. This is what's new. I don't consider it started yet because I haven't made it past the swatch. Now, this thing is heavy, but it's a way that you can hang your swatches. And then if you think it is a yarn, because this will never replicate a sweater weight, but if you think you need to stretch your yarn, you could clip like clothespins, smaller ones, to it to add weight for gravity to work on. That I got from kNot, who has since closed her business, but I am sure you could find a giant clothespin on Etsy. All right, so here's a close-up of my swatch. I did check gauge shortly before, or like after I had blocked it. I did use pins, but only because it is all stockinette and that crap rolls. So I just used my fingers to kind of make sure it was flat and then pinned it so that it would stay flat and not roll. And so this is Knitting for Olive. That is the cotton merino. This one is called Soft Blue. And if that looks gray to you, it does to me as well. And this one is called Dusty Blue Whale. And I suppose if dusty means that it has a gray tint, I agree. I think those two colors will look very good together. Here's something I realized. I do want to make, I haven't said that yet. This is a swatch for the Pop Rock tee by Tanis Fiber Arts, or Tanis from Tanis Fiber Arts. Raverly, I believe is her last name. And I did definitely want to make that, to make a fingering weight tank top. And I am realizing that if I was not shopping based on price, I would have ordered different colors to make this tee. And that is just me being completely honest. But honestly, I wear a lot of blue and I wear a lot of gray. I have some gray shorts with khaki shorts. I think this would work really well. And I know like the material is very soft. And this is much more my color scheme than this one. Perspective. Now the pattern calls for a 5 millimeter, a US 5, which is 3.75 millimeters. And I swatched flat on a US 4, which is a 3.5 millimeter. And now this sweater is knit at a construction method that is flat until you reach to the underarms. And I have enough sweater history to know that when I knit flat, and here I'll show, like, I'm not really rowing out. And if you've never heard of that, that is when you can see like a big gap between your purl ridges. Or like it alternates where you have a tight gap, a big gap, tight gap, a big gap. That is rowing out. That is a significant difference between your purl stitches and your knit stitches that causes one stitch to be a completely different gauge than the other. Like, so your purl stitch is a bigger gauge than your knit stitches. Looking at the swatch, that is not the case for me, but I know this sweater is a perfect example of that. That when I am working flat, I need to go down a needle size, and that when I'm working in the round, I need to go up. So I went the lazy way and I only swatched flat. I'm seeing what my gauge is when it's flat. When I initially measured it before hanging it, I was, I think, right on at 24 by 32. These are 8 row stripes. 4 stripes is 4 inches, so stripe per inch. I know that once I join the back to the front and I'm working in the round, I will go from the US 4, 3.5 millimeter to the US 5, 3.75 millimeter. And like I said, I have enough experience knitting sweaters that I'm not going to do anything different than that. I'll go up when I go in the round because I know it's different. And so for this is the needle I swatched on. It is my Lantern Moon interchangeables. And yep, this was my US 4, which interestingly, how they measure tips, I'm not quite sure. I thought mine were 4 inches, but nope, this is 4 inches and it is an inch shorter. Because it didn't come in the set. That is what's next, and will definitely be cast on probably Wednesday or Thursday. And I'm just excited that she'll get all that yarn out of my stash, those 4 tiny balls. All right, and then now that I have that hat, which will get done, it'll be worked on today and tomorrow, maybe Thursday, but it will be finished really quick, which means then that my only work in progress is the sock. So then I'll cast on the t-shirt, because I do always want a garment on the works in progress. But then I also want to, so probably this weekend, I'm thinking I'm going to cast on finally for my Quiltstar. These tiny little things don't want to, here. They're tiny little skeins of yarn. So let's see if I can put one on each, each finger. Oop, missed one. There we go. Laugh at myself. Oop, I want, ooh, that one. Still don't quite cooperate. Okay, I think you can see all of them. And then that is the skein I will use to knit the Quiltstar. I need to read the pattern. I've only, it was a knit along, and I was definitely checking out Ravelry to investigate what it was looking like. And she actually had the discounted price run through the time of Miss Read It Along. So I didn't buy it until the 3rd clue was out, and somebody had finished it, and then I picked up this. What's interesting is I thought in fuller light it was more yellow. In this dimmer light, it actually reads more pink to me. I'm excited to cast this one on, and having just gone to the Iowa State Fair, my hope is I will get it completed and submitted to the Iowa State Fair next year. It is such a cool design. That is actually all that I have today. 1 finished objects, 2 in progress, 1 just about to start, and 1 starting this weekend. And hopefully by the time I start both of those, that will leave me with 3 works in progress. 1 simple stockinette, 1 patchwork garter stitch, and a sock. Endlessly simple. I am actually looking forward to being able to do things at my own gauge, because it's not a test knit, so I don't have to submit yarn feedback to anyone. And it is my goal for the rest of the year to stick with knitting my own things. If you've enjoyed this episode, I would really appreciate if you give it a like. If you are new watching, I'd love if you subscribe. I have these kinds of episodes up every other week, and I've started putting out some new other types of episodes. Specifically, last week, I reorganized all of my needles that had been jammed into a box into, honestly, it takes up more space, but I'm excited for it. I will link that video in case you want to watch that and you haven't seen it yet. Thanks for joining me, and I hope you all have a great rest of your day.